Hey friends, Carl here with another Calm Survival, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some different first aid supplies that are available. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a medical professional. I don't always know the latest and greatest of best practices. I do reasonably keep up on these things, and so you may hear things where you go, hey, I've heard different. Go do some more research. Go find the latest and greatest stuff, because things always change. You may also find that some of the old home remedies that you have been told are worse than useless. Be open to that opinion, all right? Make sure you're getting good information. There is good info out there from large reputable sources, but I'm going to go through the basics of some things that I have found. Now, this is no substitute for training, but we're going to consider this more product type reviews, because brand doesn't really matter. Also, you probably can't get a lot of this stuff. Some of this stuff is from various countries. So we're going by the themes here. Different brand names, different stuff, doesn't matter. So, tape. We've got a bunch of different kinds of tape. Now, why do you need different kinds of tape? Well, on the one hand, you can have different allergies for different things, and how well you want tape to stick is actually kind of important. So this stuff, it's 3M, so anybody can get it. It's Durapore. It's kind of a smooth white fabric tape, okay? This stuff sticks really, really, really well, okay? I've used it to cover blisters. It's not super ideal for that because it does have a pattern to the cloth, so it doesn't rub freely in both directions, but it sticks monstrously well. Then we've got various kinds of paper tape, like this micropore. Okay? This stuff has seen some heat, so it's a little bit shriveled up. And we've got transpore. Both of these are easy to tear tape, but they don't stick super hard. And if you have a wound where you're actually going to want to open it up and clean it out more readily, or you're patching over something, then this is something that is going to be much more useful to you. I mean, this transport stuff is clear plastic with literally a tear grid just stitched or punched right into it, okay? It sticks well enough, but it's only going to stick for a short-ish period of time. Now, you can also get the brown hard tape and like athletic tape. I try to stay away from those. The brown tape stuff is fine. The reality is that with athletic tape, K-tape, any kind of sport tape, if you have not been very specifically trained and you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can cause lasting harm to somebody. I know people who have permanent injuries that were probably caused by the fact that somebody did a almost good tape job and then they just kept going on that injury. You can also cause compartment syndrome if you're not careful with tapes, and you can cause poor blood return, things like that. So also if we're talking sport medicine stuff, the science on tape is bad. There's a few very specific tapes that work really effectively. Most of it is placebo effect. From a first aid standpoint, don't pretend that you're taping up a football player. Just don't. It is not worth it. That is a case where use the tape where it's effective. And typically, that's holding down bandages or taping blisters. So I like the brown stuff because the brown tape tends to stick really well and slides in a couple of directions. And it's not as thick as moleskin, so that's my blister fix most of the time. But my hands down, two favoriteest things on the planet are, we've got this kind of large fabric tape, okay? Comes in a bunch of different formats, a few different companies. You can get it as sterile stuff, or you can just get it on the roll. I like it just on the roll. It's great for making big band-aids, okay? So anytime, and it's pretty hypoallergenic. I haven't run into too many people that react to it. I've also literally used this big wide swath and covered up like road rash, where it's just thin scrapes, but you just want to keep it clean. Just plastered this stuff right over the top of it until it had time to just, shower off on its own a few days later, just to keep that, big, kind of wound area, that big abrasion clear. Okay. Then we have opsite. Opsite is a similar stuff, but it's clear and it seals a wound. Okay. There's a lot of people that's going to freak them right out. You don't seal everything in, you want the wound to breathe. Maybe not. Again, you can buy that on the roll. I have had really good success with it, cleaning a wound out really, really well, and then just completely isolating it. And that is something that, again, I've had good success with. Speak to an actual real medical professional, get some advice. But I do find those to be two very useful products. Other things that are useful. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Thick, non-woven or woven gauze. I don't find a whole lot of use for, and I especially don't find it useful in the sterile form. You can buy big packs of it that are just clean gauze. To me, that's more useful. You can get into wounds, you can scrub stuff out, it's disposable. I used packs of it when I did rugby and hockey games. And everything is covered in kind of gunk anyways, so you're not really adding anything if it's clean. So for me, that's where go with the cheaper stuff, get it in the bulk pack, and then if you're, because ultimately you don't want to use that directly on a wound. You always want something that is a actual either low adherent or non-adherent kind of bandage. That's going to have a bit of a coating that is going to keep whatever, you think of the surface of the pad of a Band-Aid, it's got that little bit of a coating on that's going to keep it from sticking. Now, this is where, when we talk about first aid compared to hospital care, if you do something when you do first aid that makes the hospital visit worse, you haven't been terribly helpful. You take a bunch of loose cotton gauze, smash it into somebody's wound, okay? And just to show you what I mean, I'm just going to crack one of these open. This stuff, okay? It's fabric-y, and it leaves fibers. You smash that into somebody's wound, clots all up, great, good job, we've stopped the bleeding. But now that has to get removed from their wound. In general, for most wounds, if you put that low adherent pad on top first and then just smash a bunch of gauze on top, it's going to have the same effect, but it's going to be a lot easier for them to remove at the hospital. That's not going to be all down in the wound. Also, most first aid courses have this weird thing where you're dealing with super serious things that no one ever deals with, but you're not going to get the skills to deal with them. You're not going to learn how to pack a full depth, wound, but also you're not going to get taught how to handle a small cut. because they don't have time for that. That on top, if blood's not coming through, tape it down. You're probably going to be mostly okay. Depending on where you live, you will hear different guidelines for things like stitches. In general, if it's going to take more than 40 minutes for the stitches to go in, they are going to have to clean all of that wound out anyways, which means that any chance you had of reducing the scar has gone away. So if you can clean something out and get it sealed up faster, that tends to be better. Time tends to be of the essence. I am not a medical professional. I have had good success with fairly reasonably sized cuts where, because the cut was able to be closed without too much trouble, like it didn't hang open on its own, it was able to, the bleeding was stopped, not much of a scar left. So that's something to keep in mind, especially with things that are not life-threatening. How much can I do in this minute to solve that? That's where you will get into things like, steri strips, stuff like that. They can be super handy. They do take a bit of a technique to use. But main thing is, don't spend money on sterile gauze. Spend money on low adherent stuff, and then just buy cheap gauze. Now you can also get different kinds of pre-packaged, like this OpSite with a pad in the middle. Okay, this one has got the Cutiplast, and then so that won't cover up, pretty big wound. Now, when it comes to things like expiry dates, that's on two things. That's on whether or not the packaging is probably still sterile. Obviously, if the packaging has been opened, it's not sterile anymore. That may or may not be a problem for you. But for anything with an adhesive, it's also whether or not that adhesive is going to be effective. So if you've got pre-manufactured bandages and they've expired, they may just not work anymore. So that's where it's useful to go through them. And that's where storage will matter a whole lot. Band-Aids, I keep a whole variety, and just whatever is going to work is going to work. It turns out that the fingertip ones are actually useful, but there's a lot of times where I've picked up Band-Aids that have been a specialty sort of thing, and they haven't been super helpful, like super hardcore, heavy duty, extra strength, whatever, and then they don't stick. Okay, these big fabric ones are very, very useful. I actually got some fiberglass reinforced ones. Yeah, believe that if you will. And they were absolutely useless. And then you can also get like your nice foods, food kitchen grade bright blue ones, which, are nice. And there's nothing wrong with having funny or silly kid Band-Aids around, because sometimes you just need a Band-Aid, and that's totally fine too. Don't forget about stuff like that. So hopefully that gives you guys a bit of an idea on some of the things that are available. So especially if you're restocking first aid kits and you're wanting to change some stuff out, keep those things in mind. Your local pharmacy will probably have a bunch of stuff, but if you can find a home care supplier or a proper first aid supply store, you're probably going to get better quantities in better packaging at a better price. And that's, just jumping straight to Amazon might not actually be the best thing to do. Hunt around, find your local store, because oftentimes you can get some stuff in hand and you can actually take a look and see if it's going to match up with what you think you're actually going to use. If you don't know, if you're at the stage where you're wanting to build a kit and you don't really know what sort of stuff you want, keep it really, really simple. A few different kinds of tape to try out so that you can just see how well it sticks, see what conditions it'll stick under. Okay, a few different kinds of non-stick gauze, a few different kinds of clean gauze, stuff that's cheap that you can experiment with. That is what you want to do. I have a bunch of this more specialized stuff because I've used it. Also because I'm horribly accident prone and I do a lot of first aid on myself. So I try to, keep stuff around that's going to make my life easier. But that's me, because if I can get through a week without a major injury, we're all doing fantastic. So hopefully that's more useful information for you guys. I'm sure I'll come up with another topic soon enough. Catch you on the next one.